What's up, guys? Working on the 68 Charger today. I'm going to be pulling the front suspension off. Most of this is going to be time-lapse video, but when I get to points where I think it's important or there's something worth talking about, I'm going to go into regular video mode and let you know what I'm doing. So I'd already removed the drums, but I thought, sometimes I think to myself, maybe there's somebody that's never done this before and they have no clue how easy or hard it is, so I kind of put everything back on just to show you real quick. Basically, this dust cap is on here. All you need to do is take a screwdriver between here and tap it with a hammer, and this will pop off. And then take some pliers, and these cotter pins are basically spread apart. You're going to collapse them together, and then you could pull them out with a set of pliers. And then this little guy here, it basically locks the cotter pin, so it prevents this nut from vibrating off or turning off. Anyway, you might have to take a crescent wrench to this or something. I've already loosened it, so it's pretty easy. Sometimes it just comes off, it's easy too. So it's just a nut. Then you kind of just shake the drum and you'll get the outer bearing to come out. And then there's this washer that has a key on it. So pop that off and then just get the drum off. Now, you might have to loosen the drums to get the drum to come off. Sometimes there's a ridge on here from wear and it'll kind of like lock on, but this one's fine. So anyways, real quick, one more thing. These are some of the tools you'll be needing. A hammer, pickle fork. Trust me, pickle fork is worth its weight in gold. It makes everything easy. You're gonna need it. And then a pair of pliers for all the cotter pins. And then most everything is held on with a 3/4 inch socket. And to take the sway bar off, we're gonna be using a 9/16 or 1/2 inch. I can't remember. Alright, so much for the time-lapse starting. Anyway, one thing, I'm going to go to a disc brake conversion on this, so I'm not going to bother taking all the shoes and stuff off. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the backing plate from the spindle and leave all of that together as an assembly and then shelve it for possible use in the future. Probably not, but you never know. And the very first thing that we're going to do today, first thing we're going to start is be sure you always loosen the torsion bar. So you see this bolt right here, you loosen that guy and that'll take all the spring tension off the torsion bar because this thing's under tension right now. You start popping this stuff apart and it's going to want to slam down on you. You could get hurt. So you want to take all that tension off and it'll make things a lot easier for you. Alright, so the bolt to the torsion bar tension is pretty rusty. So one more tool is a nice long pipe, a couple feet long or so. Add to the length of the ratchet so we can get some leverage on this thing because it's a bit tough. So anyway, definitely recommend if you get a chance to get a pipe just bigger than the arm on a ratchet, a big ratchet. Definitely get yourself a pipe. Alright, on the other side, I use WD-40 to try to soak the bolt so that it's easy to come out, and man, it was a real pain. So I had to use the breaker pipe to put on the ratchet here to get it off. So then I ended up putting some grease on the threads and threading it back in a little bit,
and then re-greasing the top side and threading it out, and that worked a lot better. Of course, I'd already kind of got it going. Anyway, this side I decided to go ahead and grease it, but I probably don't need it. Looks like the power steering pump was keeping everything pretty well lubricated under here. So this side's probably going to be easy, but it doesn't hurt to throw grease on there anyway. So just real quick about these, I've actually had one of these strip on my Duster. You know, luckily it was during assembly or disassembly, I don't remember, but I was able to replace it. My buddy, he's got a Mopar shop, restoration shop called Motec. My buddy Chris Field was telling me that you should always replace these. I guess QA1 makes a nice, good, strong set. He's seen quite a few of them strip out, so he's adamant about always replacing these things. So just a little car tip there. Next, I'm going to pull the sway bar out because to get the shock out, this guy's kind of in the way. I mean, maybe I could get in there. But anyway, I'm going to pull the sway bar off next. Alright, pulling the shocks off. And I don't know what the deal with this lock nut is. It doesn't seem like it's quite a 9/16. But at least it came off by hand. Alright. Now I'm going to hit it with a wrench just to see if the whole thing's going to spin or if it's going to come off. And the whole thing's spinning. So I'm going to have to put this on, and then I'm going to grab the main body of the shock underneath. Hold it while I take this loose. Alright, so this is where I'm going to grab the shock. If I let it go, you can see how it's just spinning. So if I grab it and hold it, I could start loosening it from the top end through the inner fender well. So on top of the shock nut is this little lock nut, and it's just like stamped metal, so it's not perfectly 9/16. And I tried to pull it off by hand like the other side, which was unsuccessful. I'm gonna put the open in just to see if the whole thing turns. Looks like we might get lucky on this side. Okay, these last few turns are getting pretty tight, so I'm going to put the channel locks on the shock. See if I can hold it better. Alright, for the bottom of the shock, it's got a bolt in it. On the nut side, it's 11/16, and on the bolt head side, it's 5/8. Whoever changed the shocks on this last time, which, you know, is probably well over 40 years ago, they put this bolt facing forward. You should always
face it back, especially on a sway bar car, because of this extra bracketry for the sway bar. You can't get a box end in there. I can't get a socket in there on the nut end, and the nut end is easier to break loose than from the bolt end. So I had to put my pipe on here and just pull the crap out of it, which I'd already broken loose off camera. So when I put this back together, I'm going to put the bolt facing that way. So the 11/16 is on that side, and the 5/8 is on this side. And the 5/8, being a smaller head, will have a little more, it'll be easier to get a socket around it, or a box end wrench or whatever. So just a little tip. All right, to break the brake lines loose, you're gonna need a wrench like this. I call it a brake line wrench. I think its official name is called a flared tubing wrench or something to that effect. As you probably know, these things get rusty and they're a pain to get out. So I'm gonna hit it with some WD-40, see if that helps. And then if it doesn't, if I can't get it off, it strips, which is very typical. Which, look, it's already, oh, it came loose. But if it had stripped, I would have showed you my plan B. I need a screwdriver. Break these, let's get this off. Okay. I'm going to use a normal wrench from here on out since it's loose. All right, so this is going to be my tech tip of the day. If you round off the head of this this fitting and it's rusted on and you're like screwed, this is a last resort, but I'll use a pipe wrench, and I'll put the pipe wrench on there to knock it loose. It'll bite into the tubing, and it usually works. It usually will get it apart, but it will destroy the brake line. So, you know, if it's rounded off anyway, it's pretty much destroyed anyhow, so you're gonna have to replace it. But pipe wrench works great for breaking that off. We'll see if we have to use it on the other side. All right, I wanted to explain this real quick. So you got a cotter pin. These are really old cotter pins, and you usually will try to pull them out with pliers. These things could be kind of hard to get out. What I like to do is take a pair of cutters, something like this, and if you use cutters to pull out the cotter pin, it really bites into the metal, and it makes it easier to pull it out. So if you want to use pliers, that's fine. But if you run into a snag and having a hard time getting it out, try using a pair of cutters. And you can see I'm biting into it, and then I'm prying against the nut here, castle nut. These guys are been in there a long time and don't want to come out. All right, so we got the sway bar off and out of the way. It's not hindering anything here. We got the shock out of the way. We have the torsion bar adjuster out of the way. Brake line is loose. All the drum stuff is off, except the shoes and hardware is still on there. We're just gonna leave those on. To get the spindle out, we're gonna go from the bottom up. So we're gonna take these big bolts, takes a couple of 15/16. We're going to take those loose, and we're going to move our way up. Let what is that, 11/16? Yep. 5/8 on this side, 11/16 on that side. And then we're going to take the upper ball joint nut off. And the reason we're going in this order is because you can't get a socket up in here because the control arm's in the way. So we break all this stuff loose, we can move the lower control arm out of the way, we could get a socket to the upper ball joint. That's the plan. Alright, this thing is freaking on here. Probably never been off. So I'm going to use a little leverage. I'm wondering what would Duddy's Adventure call this. I'm going to guess gentle persuasion. And then if that didn't work, then we would go to the violent persuasion. Fortunately, that worked. So I'm going to go ahead and knock the tie rod ends loose because it's just easier to get it off while the spindle is all bolted up. Alright, violent persuasion. I don't think he uses persuasion. He just uses violent. I can't remember what he calls this. Violent tool? All right, a little bit of an issue. This ball joint is super loose. Usually it was pretty tight and you can knock the nut loose. So if I try to loosen on it, this thing just wants to spin around. So I put a bolt back in it like that. And then actually need to get the socket in here first, like that, then put the bolt, hold it, help keep it from spinning, and I was able to knock it loose. I can pull it out. Alright, now you might be tempted to just take the upper A-arm loose, pull all this out, get it out of your way, and deal with it later. But don't do that, because the best workbench for taking all this crap loose is the car itself. You have, as long as the upper A-arm's bolted in, you have something that's going to hold this thing for you, so you can knock this loose with the pickle fork, and you can get a socket on here to pull the ball joint out. You're going to want to do all of that before you take the upper A-arm out. Alright, man, this thing doesn't want to come undone. Make sure you have safety glasses, because you're going to beat the hell out of this thing. As you can see, chips go flying out. You don't want one of those in your eye. In fact, I'm going to be standing up here where my head is mostly protected by the fender. So if anything comes flying off, hopefully it stays in here. But give you an idea of what it takes to get these off.
Holy shit, that was tough. So, you need a lot of girth, man. I think that qualifies for a lot of violence to get that bad boy off. Alright, now we're going to clean all this up so we can get the ball joint out. Alright, there's not really a whole lot that's magical or enlightening about pulling the upper A-arms. It's basically, you have bolts with an eccentric washer that's attached to it. When you turn it, it basically moves the control arm in or out. And then you got a nut with another eccentric washer on this side. And the bolts go from the inside out. So we're just going to pull that off and move on to the other side. Alright, to pop the upper A arms off, I use a crowbar. Kind of get these guys out. Alright, so I'm pulling the torsion bars out next. There's the torsion bar. Goes through the frame of the car, this cross brace. And you can see right here, there's a clip in here. So, it's pretty easy. You just grab a pair of pliers or something and grab that clip and boom, pop it out. Now the torsion bar can come through the body of the car. We can slide it out. Alright, so that's the next step. Alright, so we're using the torsion bar removal tool. Pretty simple. You take the bolts out, unclamp it, clamp this around the torsion bar, and then you smack it to get it to pop out. Alright, just so we're clear, we've got the torsion bar adjusting screw already out. So there's no tension on the lower control arm. So we could smack the control or the torsion bar out without any kind of issue. Alright, so just a little recap. Make sure you have no tension before you go smacking on the torsion bar. You're not going to change a torsion bar without loosening the adjusting screw on the lower control arm. In my case, I already got it out, as you saw in the earlier part of the video. So there's no tension on here. We can smack it all we want, and then we'll get the torsion bar out. So it's out of the lower control arm. Now we got to take the tool back off, and then we could slide the torsion bar through the cross member, through that cross brace, and get it out. All right, so these are the struts. They go through the K-member and into the lower control arm. They basically keep everything stable and tied together. Kind of lucky on this one. Somebody already pulled the roll pin out of it, and I just got to take the copper pin out, so that's not going to be too big of a deal. And then we'll pull the nut off. The other side still has the roll pin, which is a little more difficult to do. So we'll do that next. Alright, so the driver's side still has the roll pin in there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to tap it upward, because going down it's going to end up, the frame and battery tray and all this stuff's going to be in the way. So I'm going to try to tap it up till it's flush, and then I'm going to get a punch and punch it out the rest of the way. Roll pin out. It's good. Alright, so these struts can be kind of tricky. I kind of think this side's usually the hardest side to get off. So I'm going to leave the other end tight, and then I'm going to try to loosen this end. This end is a 15/16. The other end is 3/4. Alright, so the control arm's wanting to move. I'm going to have to put the persuader on here. There we go. Basically, the control arm bottomed out. Alright. We got the nut off the front of the strut. We're trying to get the back one off, but as I turn the bar, the strut is basically spinning. So we need to hold this. Best way I found to hold it is with a pipe wrench. It'll bite into the bar. Now it is going to leave teeth marks in your bar, but these things are usually bent anyway, and you usually have to replace them anyways. So, and it's just, I guess, slightly cosmetic. I mean, you can knock the burrs off. It's not going to be that bad. It's not like it's going to, if this is straight, it's not going to render it useless. I only mention it because some guys are really particular and they want everything to be perfect. Well, this is going to put teeth marks in your strut, so it's not going to be perfect, but this is how you can get it off. I need to get a thinner socket. Alright, got a thinner socket. Didn't mark it up too bad. Alright, now the lower control arm pivot, we gotta take that nut off next.
The lower control arm pivot is also a 15/16. Yeah. Also needs some persuasion. All right, a couple things to go over. You want to make note of the steering link. So basically, if you could kind of notice this, the middle of the bar, it is in a back down direction, kind of diagonal this way. So when you're putting it back together, you don't have it on upside down or the right side to the left side. I mean, if you can mark it, that's great, but you know, after we get this all cleaned up, the mark's gonna go away. So I'm making a note here down towards the back rear. So when it goes back on, that's the way it needs to face. Second thing is, I'm trying to loosen this nut, this castle nut on the idler arm, and it's just spinning. So it's not coming off of the shaft. The whole shaft is spinning. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jam the pickle fork up in here to try to tighten everything up, hopefully keep it from spinning, so I can get that nut off of there.